In a shocking twist of fate, a teacher who discriminates against a new student quickly learns that he is connected to her past in a way she never expected. The morning sunlight filtered through the tall windows of room 208, casting long golden streaks across rows of neatly arranged desks. Ms. Lena Harper stood at the front of the class, a warm smile tugging at the corners of her mouth as her seventh graders filed in with the usual mix of chatter, yawns, and slamming backpacks. It was a new semester, a fresh start, and Lena always took comfort in that. She adjusted her cardigan, flipping open her clipboard as the bell rang sharply overhead. The students slowly settled, murmurs dying down. She scanned the list of names with practiced ease, calling roll as pens scratched against notebooks and sneakers tapped against tile. Jasmine Bailey? Here. Connor Jenkins? Yo. Marcus Reyes? There was a pause. Then, from the very back row, a quiet voice. Here. She looked up, eyes locking onto the new face she hadn't noticed before. The boy sat hunched low, his hands tucked inside the sleeves of his hoodie. His eyes, dark, watchful, and startlingly familiar, met hers for the briefest second before darting away. Lena's breath hitched. Reyes. The name echoed in her ears like a forgotten melody, one she hadn't heard since the night her sister disappeared from her life. Her fingers stiffened around the clipboard, a tremor rushing through her spine. It couldn't be. It was just a coincidence. Reyes wasn't an uncommon name. She forced herself to continue. Welcome, Marcus, she said, her voice steady though her heart was racing. Glad to have you with us. He gave a small nod but said nothing. As the lesson began, Lena tried to focus on the syllabus, on comma splices, essay prompts, and literary themes, but her mind kept drifting back to that boy in the back row. His features were delicate but strong, the slope of his nose and curve of his brow achingly reminiscent of someone else, someone she hadn't allowed herself to think about in years. Her sister Dana. The last time she'd seen her was through the haze of a screaming match, tears, slammed doors, and years of silence that followed. Dana had run off into a life Lena was never part of, and eventually, the calls stopped. The letters stopped. Then Dana disappeared entirely, just vanished. And now here was this boy, with her name on his records and her face in his eyes. When the bell rang to end the period, the students surged toward the door. Marcus stayed behind, collecting his things slowly, methodically. Lena watched him, her chest tightening with a weight she couldn't explain. As he walked past her desk, she said softly, "If you need anything, Marcus, I'm here." He glanced at her, uncertain. "Thanks, miss." And then he was gone, swallowed by the tide of students in the hallway. Lena sat down slowly, staring at the empty desk he'd left behind. Reyes. The past, it seemed, had found its way back, quietly, unexpectedly, and sitting in the back row of her classroom. The classroom was quiet again, emptied of the laughter and footsteps that had filled it just an hour before. Lena sat at her desk, the soft hum of the heater the only sound in the room. Her eyes were on the attendance sheet, her finger tracing the name she couldn't stop thinking about. Marcus Reyes. She whispered it aloud, testing the way it sounded against the silence. Reyes. The name had struck her like a blow earlier that morning, and it hadn't left her since. She opened the bottom drawer of her desk, digging past lesson plans and old student projects until her fingers found the spine of a worn leather journal. It had been years since she opened it. She flipped through the pages, past scribbled memories and old poetry drafts, until she reached the one that stopped her cold. There, written in her own shaky handwriting, was Dana's full name, Dana Reyes. Lena sat back in her chair, her throat tightening. Dana had married young, impulsively to a man Lena never met. After that, the letters started to come less often, until they stopped completely. The last thing she remembered was a voicemail, garbled and rushed. Dana's voice asking for something, maybe help, but Lena hadn't returned the call. Pride, fear. She didn't know anymore. Could Marcus really be her son? That night, Lena sat on her couch with the glow of her laptop casting harsh light across her tired face. She searched the school database. Minimal information, just a birth date and a guardian name, Carmen Rodriguez. No mention of a mother. No emergency contact listed under Dana. Next, she searched social media. The name Dana Reyes pulled up dozens of profiles, most of them strangers. But halfway down the page, she found one. The profile picture was faded, a woman's back facing the ocean, but the posts stopped abruptly 2 years ago. The last one was a quote, "Sometimes you have to disappear to survive." Lena stared at it, a pit opening in her chest. There were no comments, no tags, no birthday messages, no photos of a child. She kept clicking, forums, obituary databases, anything. But it was like Dana had been erased. All that remained were whispers in digital corners, fragments too fragile to hold. When Lena finally looked at the time, it was nearly 3 a.m. The room was dark except for the light of her screen. She closed the laptop, her hands trembling. If Marcus was Dana's son, then something had happened. Something big. And now, that boy, the boy with Dana's eyes, was in her classroom, carrying secrets she didn't yet understand. Lena leaned back into the couch, her heart heavy. The past wasn't just knocking, it had already stepped through the door. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows of Lena's small apartment. She sat at the kitchen table, untouched tea cooling beside her, the only light coming from the dim overhead bulb. Her mind wasn't in the present. It hadn't been all day. It was back in that narrow, suffocating house on Sycamore Street, where every footstep had the weight of fear behind it. She remembered the cracked tiles in the hallway, the way the wallpaper peeled near the stairs. But most of all, she remembered Dana. They had been inseparable once. Dana, 3 years older, had always taken the lead. She would drag Lena through fields in the summer, make up games with impossible rules, and tell stories that made Lena forget the bruises that followed raised voices in the night. Their father had a temper that snapped like dry twigs. A slammed door, a misplaced toy, anything could set him off. Their mother always looked away, lips pressed tight, as if silence could keep the house from breaking. But it broke anyway. Dana had always protected her, shielded her when she could, distracted him when she couldn't. Lena still remembered the night Dana stood between him and her, voice trembling but eyes defiant. She was only 15, but in that moment, she was everything Lena needed. 3 years later, Dana was gone. She left with a duffel bag and a stubborn tilt to her chin. "I'm not staying in this house another minute," she'd said, arms wrapped tight around Lena in the backyard. "Don't let them tell you who to be, Lenny. You get out, too." Lena nodded, tears hot on her cheeks, the scent of grass and fear hanging in the air. Dana left that night. Letters came at first, scribbled notes about a new job, a guy she liked, plans to go west, but the messages grew darker, lonelier. Then came the voicemail. Lena had only listened to it once. Dana's voice had been hurried, shaky. There was fear in it, real fear, but no details, just a plea. "Lenny, I don't know where else to go. I messed up. If you get this, please." The message had cut off. Lena never heard from her again. Now, years later, the silence Dana left behind had taken form. A boy with guarded eyes and a last name that refused to stop echoing through Lena's thoughts. She pushed her tea away and covered her face with her hands. The guilt she thought she had buried resurfaced, sharp and unforgiving. She should have called back. She should have tried harder. Instead, she had let Dana slip through her fingers like dust. Now, that dust had returned. and it was sitting in the back row of room 208, staring quietly at the world, waiting for someone to see him, waiting for her. The classroom felt colder than usual, the overhead lights too bright, the air too still. Lena sat at the small round table in the corner of room 208, a folder neatly arranged in front of her. She told herself it was just a routine meeting, just another parent-teacher conference, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She checked the time. 3:57 p.m. At exactly 4, the door creaked open. A woman stepped inside, wrapped in a worn denim jacket, her eyes scanning the room with the kind of wariness that came from years of living on edge. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, her face drawn with fatigue, but Lena recognized her instantly. "Carmen?" The woman paused, her guard flickering. "Yeah, you must be Miss Harper." Lena stood, heart pounding. "It's been a long time." Carmen's expression shifted, suspicion giving way to cautious recognition. "Lena Harper, damn, I didn't expect... You're his teacher?" Lena nodded slowly. "Please, sit." They settled into the chairs. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them stretched long and complicated. "I asked for this meeting," Lena finally said, "because I needed to know. Marcus, is he..." Carmen exhaled hard, her shoulders sagging. "Yeah, he's Dana's boy." The confirmation hit like a punch. Lena blinked fast, her throat tightening. "I thought maybe, but I wasn't sure." "He doesn't know," Carmen said quickly, her voice low. "Not the whole story. Just that his mom's gone. He thinks she got sick." Lena's voice barely rose above a whisper. "What happened?" Carmen stared at the floor for a long time. She was doing okay for a while, holding down work, trying to stay clean. But life kept hitting her, one thing after another. She slipped. Carmen's voice cracked. "Last year, fentanyl. She didn't make it." Lena closed her eyes, pain pressing behind her ribs. "She didn't have anyone else," Carmen continued. "No family she trusted. She named me guardian in her will. I couldn't say no, not to Dana." Lena looked up, eyes swimming. "Why didn't you tell me?" Carmen's gaze hardened. "She didn't want you to know. Thought you moved on, that you picked your side a long time ago." The words stung, but Lena didn't argue. Maybe Dana had been right. Maybe silence was a choice. "I didn't know," Lena said, voice cracking. "I didn't know how bad it got. I would have..." "But you didn't," Carmen said gently. "None of us did." They sat there, two women with too much history and not enough answers. "I just want to help him," Lena whispered. "He's in my class, and I see it in his eyes. He's carrying so much." Carmen nodded slowly. "Then help him. He needs someone. Just go slow. He's been let down too many times already." Lena stared at the folder in front of her, her fingers trembling as she closed it. She couldn't bring Dana back, but maybe she could still be there for the boy she left behind. The rain tapped gently against Lena's window, a steady rhythm that matched the ache in her chest. She sat on the edge of her couch, phone pressed to her ear, waiting as the line rang. Her fingers curled tightly around the blanket in her lap, her heart pounding as if it already knew the answer she didn't want to hear. Carmen picked up on the third ring. "Lena." "Hey," Lena said, her voice barely there. "Do you have a minute?" A pause, then, Yeah, I do." Lena took a breath, steadying herself. "I keep thinking about it. Marcus, Dana, everything I didn't know. And I can't stop asking myself, why? Why didn't she tell me?" There was silence on the other end. Then Carmen sighed, the sound full of exhaustion and years that weighed heavy. Because she thought you didn't want to know. Lena blinked, stunned. What? She thought you picked them, Carmen said softly. Your parents. The day she left, she told me, she said you stayed, that you didn't come after her. And after the voicemail, when you didn't call back, she figured that was your answer. Lena's throat closed. She stood abruptly, pacing the room, the phone trembling in her grip. That's not true. I didn't know what to say. I was scared. I thought she didn't want me in her life anymore. She did, Carmen said, her voice tight. But pride runs deep, especially when it's mixed with pain. She was ashamed, Lena, of how things turned out, of the choices she made. She didn't want you to see her like that, not as the girl who ran away and ended up lost. Lena sank back onto the couch, her breath catching. The guilt pressed harder now, like hands around her lungs. All those years, the empty holidays, the photos never taken, she'd told herself Dana had cut her off. But now she saw the truth in its cruel, quiet form. They had both stopped reaching. I should have called, Lena whispered. I should have tried harder. Maybe, Carmen said. But blame won't change what's done. All we have now is Marcus. And he doesn't need perfect. He just needs someone who won't disappear. Lena stared out the window, the city lights blurred through streaks of rain. A memory flashed, Dana and her lying under the covers as kids, whispering secrets into the dark, promising never to leave each other behind. But she had. And now, the silence they left unspoken had grown roots in a boy who didn't even know the whole truth. I want to be there for him, Lena said quietly. Then be there, Carmen replied. Start now. As the call ended, Lena sat motionless, the weight of what was lost settling into her bones. But beneath the grief, something else stirred. Resolve. The last bell rang, and the students spilled into the hallway like water bursting through a dam, laughing, shouting, slamming lockers with careless hands. But Marcus stayed in his seat, silent as always, his pencil moving steadily across the page. It was writing day, an assignment Lena had given to help them process, reflect, or simply get their thoughts out. Write about someone who changed your life, she had said, even if they're gone. She'd tried not to look at Marcus while saying it, tried not to let her voice waver. Now, the room had emptied, and Marcus quietly slid his paper onto her desk before leaving without a word. Lena waited until the door clicked shut behind him before reaching for it, her heart already bracing. The title was simple. Her name was Dana. Her breath caught. The handwriting was neat but pressed hard into the page, like each word had weight. She read in silence, the classroom dimming around her as the afternoon sun dipped lower. I don't remember her laugh. I don't remember the sound of her voice. People ask what she was like, and I have to guess. She was always tired, always searching for something. I think maybe she was sad or scared. I just know she loved me. I could feel it even when she couldn't say it, but sometimes I wonder, did anyone really know her? Or did she just get lost before anyone could try? Lena pressed a hand to her mouth, her throat thick with unshed tears. The paper shook in her grasp. He didn't know. He didn't know the girl who used to sing to the radio at full volume, who once jumped into a freezing creek just to make Lena laugh, who fought so hard for so long until the world finally wore her down. He only had the shadows. Lena folded the essay gently, holding it to her chest like it might fall apart. The silence she'd clung to, the one she thought was protecting him, was doing the very opposite. The next day, as the final bell rang, she stood at the front of the classroom and met Marcus's eyes for the first time in weeks. Marcus, she said softly, can you stay a minute? He hesitated, backpack slung over one shoulder, then gave a small nod. She waited until the room was empty. Then she pulled a photo from her desk drawer, a faded image of two girls sitting on a porch, arms wrapped around each other, laughing like they had forever ahead. "That's me," she said, sliding it across the desk. "And that's your mom." Marcus stared at it, his lips parting, but no words came. "She was brave," Lena whispered, "and complicated. And she loved you more than anything. I know because she was my sister." For the first time, Marcus looked at her, not through her, and in his eyes Lena saw the past and the future collide. The classroom felt different after hours, quieter, softer, like the walls themselves had exhaled. Lena sat at the reading table near the windows, a worn copy of Where the Sidewalk Ends open in front of her. Across from her, Marcus flipped through the pages, pretending to read, though his eyes kept drifting to the photo propped beside them. His mother, Dana, 17, barefoot on the beach, her wild hair tangled by the wind, the picture Lena had brought in their first afternoon together. "She hated shoes," Lena said with a soft smile. "Used to kick them off the second she got outside. Drove our mom crazy." Marcus's lips twitched, just barely. "I do that too," he murmured. Lena nodded. "I know. I noticed." Their sessions had started a week ago. Tutoring, she'd called it, though neither of them mentioned grades. It was about showing up, sitting in the silence, letting it stretch long enough to feel safe. Some days they read, other days they didn't. "She used to write poems," Lena said one afternoon. "Taped them to her mirror. She had this one she wrote about the moon, said it watched her like it was waiting for her to do something important." Marcus looked up. "I didn't know she liked poetry." "She loved it," Lena said, "even when things got hard. Especially then." He was quiet for a long time, fingers tracing the edges of the book in front of him. When he finally spoke, his voice was so soft Lena almost missed it. "She used to hum at night. I don't remember the tune, just that it made the dark feel less scary." Lena swallowed the lump rising in her throat. "She hummed when she was nervous, or thinking. I used to tease her about it." Marcus looked at her, something shifting behind his eyes. "She was sad a lot, wasn't she?" Lena hesitated, then nodded. "She was, but she was also strong and kind, and funny in the strangest ways. She had this laugh that filled a room, like she didn't care who was listening." Marcus smiled, this time for real. "I think I remember her laugh." That smile, small and fleeting, was everything. A fragile thread stretching across years of silence and loss, tying past to present. As the weeks passed, their meetings became ritual. Lena shared stories about Dana's rebellion, her fire, her relentless heart. Marcus shared, too, his fears, his anger, the questions he'd never dared to ask out loud. And somewhere in between poems and paperback novels, they built something new. Not a replacement, a bridge. Each day, Lena watched the weight on Marcus's shoulders lift just a little. And in his quiet resilience, she saw echoes of the girl she'd lost, and hope for the boy she'd just found. The auditorium buzzed with restless energy, parents fanning themselves with folded programs, students adjusting ties and tugging at dresses, the low hum of anticipation wrapping the room in a warm, expectant hush. Lena sat in the front row, hands clasped in her lap, heart pounding a little harder with each name called. Marcus was last. He waited behind the curtain, his paper folded neatly in his hand. Lena had read the poem once before, when he shyly slid it across her desk after school the week prior. But even then, he'd barely looked her in the eye. Now he stood in front of an entire room. When his name was called, he stepped onto the stage slowly, his shoes scuffing softly against the wooden floor. The spotlight caught him like a moment too big for his small frame, but he didn't flinch. He unfolded the paper, cleared his throat. "This is called the space between stars," he said. "It's for the woman I never really knew, and the aunt I finally found." Lena's breath caught. He began to read. She lived in shadows and quiet songs, in rooms I only remember in dreams. She left pieces of herself in lullabies, in worn-out photos and crooked seams. They said she broke. I think she bent too much weight, too little rest. She tried, I know she did, because she gave me her best, and now there's someone else. Someone who carries the same smile, who tells me stories of her laughter, and sits with me a while. There's still so much I don't know, and still gaps I cannot fill. But love, I'm learning, is something you can build, even from ruins, even still. The final word hung in the air like a heartbeat. Silence. Heavy, aching silence. Then the applause came. Thunderous, rising from the front row to the back like a wave breaking across the shore. But Lena didn't clap. She couldn't. Her hands were pressed against her mouth, eyes brimming with tears. Pride and grief knotted so tightly inside her it hurt to breathe. Marcus looked down as he left the stage, cheeks flushed, his steps quick. Backstage, when the lights dimmed and the final bow had been taken, Lena found him standing alone near the exit, still clutching the poem. She didn't say a word, just opened her arms. He hesitated for half a second. Then he stepped into her. The hug was clumsy and tight and full of everything neither of them could ever say out loud. Not just a teacher and a student, not anymore. Family. As they stepped outside, the evening sky stretched wide above them, dark but speckled with stars. The past couldn't be rewritten, but together they could write something new.